When I first moved into my new house, I felt excited. It was a small, white house with blue shutters and a tiny garden in front. The street was quiet, with tall trees that gave shade in the summer. I thought this was the perfect place to begin a new chapter of my life. But very soon, I met my neighbor. His name was Mr. Howard. He lived in the house next to mine. The first time I saw him, he was standing by the fence, watching me carry boxes from the car. His face was serious, his eyes sharp, and his voice was not friendly. "You're blocking the sidewalk," he said. "People need to walk here." I looked around. The street was empty. No one was walking. I felt a little embarrassed and quickly moved the boxes. I smiled politely and said, "I'm sorry, I just moved in today." He didn't smile back. He just nodded and walked away slowly, his cane tapping the ground with every step. During the first week, I noticed more of his behavior. Every morning he stood at his porch and looked around like a guard. If my trash can was not exactly in the right place, he pointed at it. If I parked my car a little too close to his side of the street, he frowned. If my grass grew a little longer than his, he shook his head. I tried to be kind. I said hello, I waved, but he never waved back. He only said things like, "Your tree needs cutting," or "Your dog is too loud." At night, I sometimes heard him shouting at the TV. He seemed like a man who carried anger inside him all the time. I started to avoid him. When I went outside, I checked first if he was there. If I saw him sitting on his porch, I waited until he went inside. I told myself, he is just a bitter old man. Maybe he doesn't like anyone. One afternoon, I was planting flowers in my garden. The sun was warm, the soil smelled fresh, and I felt calm. Then I heard his voice again. "You're planting them too close together. They won't grow like that." I felt my face burn. I wanted to say something angry, but instead I said nothing. I just kept working. He stood there for a moment, then went inside. My good mood was gone. Weeks passed like this. Every time I saw him, he had something negative to say. My friends who visited me noticed too. One of them whispered, "Wow, your neighbor is scary." Another laughed and said, "Maybe he used to be a soldier. He acts like he's still in command." One rainy evening, as I carried groceries from the car, I slipped a little on the wet sidewalk. The bags almost fell, but I caught them. At that moment, I saw Mr. Howard watching me from his window. His face was hidden behind the glass, but I knew he saw me. He didn't come out. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just pulled the curtain. That night, lying in bed, I thought about him. Why was he always so cold? Why did he never smile? I felt angry, but also curious. There must be a reason. The next morning, when I went outside to get the newspaper, I saw something unusual. His mailbox was open, and inside was a letter with a photo sticking out. The wind was moving the paper, and I could see part of it. I glanced quickly, and for just a second, I saw the image of a woman. She looked young, with kind eyes. The paper looked old, almost yellow. Mr. Howard came out quickly and closed the mailbox. He noticed me looking. His face was red, and he said sharply, "Mind your own business." Then he turned and walked back inside. I stood there, holding my newspaper, my heart beating fast. For the first time, I didn't feel only irritation. I felt something else. Maybe sadness. Maybe loneliness. I didn't know yet, but something told me there was a story behind that picture. After that day with the mailbox, I could not stop thinking about Mr. Howard. Who was the woman in the picture? Why did he look so upset when I noticed it? 1 week later, I finally had a chance to learn more. I was coming home with groceries when I saw him outside, trying to lift a heavy trash bag. His hands shook, and the bag slipped from his grip. Without thinking, I ran over and said, "Let me help you." He looked surprised, almost angry, but he stepped aside. I picked up the bag and put it in the bin. For the first time, he did not complain. He just said, in a quiet voice, "Thank you." That small word stayed in my mind. Maybe behind his cold eyes, there was still a softer side. A few days later, I baked an apple pie. It was still warm, the smell sweet in my kitchen. I decided to take a risk. I walked to his porch and knocked on the door. He opened it slowly, his face suspicious. "I made too much," I said, holding the pie. "Would you like some?" He stared at me for a long moment. Then, without a word, he took the pie from my hands. I thought he would close the door, but instead he said, "Wait." He disappeared inside and came back with 2 plates. He cut the pie and gave me a slice. We sat down on his porch in silence. The pie was sweet, the evening air was cool, and for the first time, he did not seem so frightening. It became the beginning of something new. Sometimes I brought him soup. Sometimes he gave me vegetables from his small garden. Slowly, very slowly, he began to talk. One evening, as we sat on his porch, he pointed to the old photograph on the table beside him. It was the same woman I had seen before. "Her name was Margaret," he said. His voice was low. "She was my wife." I listened quietly. He told me how they had lived in that house for 40 years. How she had loved flowers, books, and long walks in the park. How she got sick and passed away 5 years ago. His voice broke when he said, after she was gone, the house felt empty. And so did I. In that moment, I finally understood him. The anger, the sharp words, the silence, they were not just rudeness. They were pain. He was a man carrying a heavy grief. From then on, I visited him more often. I brought dinner sometimes. I sat with him on quiet evenings. He began to smile a little. He told me stories about his younger days, about the trips he and Margaret had taken. Sometimes his eyes grew wet, but sometimes he laughed too. The neighbors noticed the change. "Mr. Howard looks different these days," one of them said. And it was true. His house, once dark and closed, now had open curtains. Sometimes I saw him sitting by the window with a book. Months passed, and my birthday came. I did not expect him to remember. But that afternoon, he knocked on my door. In his hands was a small, carefully wrapped package. The paper was plain, but tied with a neat ribbon. "Happy birthday," he said softly. I opened it and found an old book. The cover was worn, the pages yellow. Inside the first page was a note written in delicate handwriting, "For Margaret, who filled my life with light." My eyes filled with tears. Mr. Howard looked at me and said, "It belonged to her. She loved this book. But now, I want you to have it. Because you brought light back into this house." I didn't know what to say. I just held the book close and whispered, "Thank you." From that day, everything felt different. He was still the same man with white hair and a serious face, but he was no longer only the bitter old neighbor. He was a person with a story, with love, and with loss. And I realized something important. Sometimes, behind the hardest walls, there is a heart waiting for kindness. A simple pie, a short visit, a small act of care, it can open a door to another soul. That was the gift Mr. Howard gave me, along with the old book. He reminded me that even in silence, even in sadness, light can return.